Salutations everybody, it is Maddie here today. It's December. That means the entire games industry has slowed down to a snail's pace. Game launches are slow, there's hardly any gaming news. It's the perfect time to indulge in a game you've been neglecting on your backlog or dive back into one that you love oh so dearly. I've personally been performing the latter as I go back to Divinity Original Sin 2, which I recently claimed was the best RPG of the last decade in a prior video. Given that claim, I wanted to elaborate more on why I feel that way, so here's my 2019 review for Divinity Original Sin 2. Let's begin things with the story. You are a sorcerer, and using Source in Rivellon is now banned. You start off by creating your character by choosing a class between a battle mage, cleric, conjurer, enchanter, fighter, inquisitor, knight, metamorph, ranger, rogue, shadowblade, wayfarer, witch, or wizard, as well on top of all of this as any of the game's preset characters which have their own individual stories. There is so much choice right off the rip, and then you can pick your race between a human, elf, dwarf, wizard, and undead, and your adventure will then begin on Fort Joy, where characters react to you properly based off your equipment, based off what race you are. Some people will respect you. The game gets very political. All the different races view each other in separate ways, where, for example, you'll see dwarves engage in conversation with other dwarves in just fine fashion, but if you're an elf and you go and talk to a dwarf, he may be a bit disgusted with you because elves in Divinity Original Sin are allowed to eat body parts and obtain the memory, so often they're referred to as cannibals. Anyway, you're sent to Fort Joy because what they want to do is free you of your source. But what's actually happening here is they are purging you, and they are turning anyone who uses source into a mindless husk. So it's your goal now to escape Fort Joy. But that's only the introduction. You soon learn you are God-woken and that you were saved by one of Rivellon's 7 gods. And it's now up to you to either destroy or aid the rest of Rivellon as the void chases down all of the gods that were just recently helping you. There's much more to this story. It goes much deeper than what's initially presented to you, but it gets better over time. And for me personally, I think that's rare given that I'm not the biggest lover of a fantasy-based story. It's very hard to buy in. But there is a lot of agency over how this story unfolds. There's a lot of choices along the way, both in side quests as well as the main quests. And the way that everything's delivered to you is at just the right pace. But what's great about this game is that I know a lot of people can get turned off by this isometric style RPG. However, it is able to be played in full online co-op up to 4 players. And let me tell you what, if this is the type of game that you go about, picking it up with a friend is one of the best things that you can do. It makes it a lot more enjoyable, and honestly, learning the game's complex systems becomes a lot easier when you put all of your heads together. I can speak personally for myself. When I first played Divinity Original Sin 1 back many years ago, I had to have a friend hop online with me and we had to put our heads together to fully understand all the systems in place. There's a lot of things happening in this game. It can be a little overwhelming at first, but getting some friends together not only makes it a lot more fun, it also works damn well, but also can help you understand if you're brand new to these types of games. Let's talk a bit about the combat. This is really the true highlight of Divinity Original Sin 2 because there's a clear set of rules, which is what you can use, your enemies can use. So you may have access to a beast amount of skills. The amount of times I've upgraded my equipment, had all the skill books read and been like, man, I'm gonna go in and dominate my next combat session, and it was still grueling, difficult. Oh my gosh, it happens all the time. Because you see, one of the main factors of Divinity's combat system is that there's a lot of playing around with the elements. If there's a steam cloud, you can electrocute it and create a lightning cloud. If there's blood on the ground because your rogue stabbed someone and now there's blood on the floor, you can electrocute that and cause an electrified blood pool, which can stun enemies if they run through it. You can use oil and set it ablaze with a mage's spell and create a line of fire, which will prevent enemies from progressing towards you. There is so much creativity and thought and tools embedded within this combat system, and it only further enforces your build. For example, I'm an Elven Ranger. I get a damage bonus when I shoot from the high ground.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
So my goal is always to shoot from above, but that's why I want to tool my character as more of a polymorph elf ranger, because now I have the ability to grow wings and then fly to where I want to go in the combat field. And now I have a certain amount of range that other archers don't have. So it allows me to outsmart certain enemies. And that doesn't even get into archer specific skills like pinning them down by crippling them or using a piercing arrow and hitting multiple enemies at once. Each character build has its own sets of pros and cons. No one's truly dominant. You can be tanky, but everyone hits like a bus in Divinity Original Sin 2, so you can only be so tanky. You can be a glass cannon as a mage, but there are so many ways to approach you in combat that you're not going to be safe for long. A rogue can do quick successive damage, but they're very susceptible as well given their low armor rating. No one is truly powerful in Divinity Original Sin 2, and I think that's one of the best parts about its combat system. That also doesn't get into how well structured each encounter is. None of them are thoughtless. Each of them are strategically and thoughtfully placed out, sometimes resulting in ambushes which can make you go, oh boy, when was my last save? But the ways enemies are delicately placed in just the right positions to create thoughtful challenges that require you to maneuver the environment in a way that not really any other game can replicate, because oftentimes it will take me a try or two to get a decent amount of the combat scenarios, and in Divinity, it feels really good when you win a fight on the first try. It does turn you into a save scummer, but quite honestly, can't say I regret it. But while combat is good, I really like exploration in Divinity Original Sin 2, and I don't think RPGs of this style normally have great exploration because it's overhead. Sometimes I like to have the camera behind the shoulder, truly see the world. But what Divinity does is puts in daunting surprises at every turn where you can maybe see some treasure, or maybe you'll find a dog, and if you have the Pet Pal perk, you can now talk with that dog and find out that this dog can actually summon gigantic creatures, and it turns into this amazing battle, and this dog was actually guarding a crypt with tons of treasure on the inside. The goal of Divinity Original Sin 2 was to surprise you at each and every turn and also allow you to creatively explore. It starts off right away on Fort Joy when you get your hands on some teleportation gloves, if you can find them, and you can actually enter the castle that's in the center of Fort Joy that's been broken down over time and teleport yourself up there. Like, there are so many ways to approach exploration, and that's what makes it so ultimately enticing. There's a level of freedom in this game. For example, I killed a merchant because they were out there by themselves and they had no one to protect them. They had legendary bows and crossbows on them, and as a ranger, I thought, you know what? I'm playing kind of the outlaw here, this will benefit me. Only to find out that this character only tied into one of the previously mentioned preset characters' stories, and at a certain point in that storyline, they do go away because eventually your squad is locked in. So for me, I realized, wow, I just had the freedom to take out this merchant, take their stuff, face no penalty, and buff my character, and still the combat would be pretty tough. I think that's a sign of great balance, but also empowering the player at every turn. You also really do have the freedom to attack anyone in this game, and I mean literally anybody. Conversations with everybody are possible, and it's so rewarding to invest in them because sometimes you'll have a funny conversation, sometimes your character build will be rewarded where maybe you can shorten a quest based how you have approached creating said character. It's just really rewarding to invest your time into. But on the other hand, it's not perfect, right? It's old school, and while old school works for some people, it doesn't work for all. There's unclear quest directions, which I personally think really leans more towards the side of not holding your hand. Same thing with combat. You will get killed in the middle of a long slobber knocker and be like, man, I was so close, and realize that your last save you made was 30 minutes ago, and you're like, oh, I gotta do it all over again. Like I said, the game will turn you into a save scummer. It's something you sort of have to embrace. There is a quick save option, so it happens pretty instantaneously. But like I said, it's old school. Does not hold your hand. You can get punished quite easily in this game. You can stumble into an ambush, die very fast. I mean, the game is not afraid to kick your butt. Is that a flaw? I wouldn't say so, but it's definitely a style of game that's not for everybody. There are actual flaws though. Sometimes in this game, because of the way exploration is handled, because of its old school nature, sometimes you'll feel like you made zero progress in a multi-hour session because maybe you strayed off the path, you died, now you have to reload, you stray off a different path, nope, that's too high level of an area. It can be very punishing, almost to a negative degree. Another very specific problem I have is that you can't boot a formerly created character out of your session. So if you start a save with one of your friends, let's say you make a 4-player co-op session, right? And one of your friends' schedules changes, or they don't get on as often, or it's just really hard to get everyone into one session. You can't say, hey man, drop out of this, kick their character out and call it a day. I am stuck with one of my friend's created characters. I've been managing her. It's really annoying, but I would love to be able to just kick her out and call it a day. Next is that I feel, after re-experiencing this game a couple of times, that the story and choices don't really gain steam till you leave Fort Joy. And don't get me wrong, I think Fort Joy is absolutely one of the best, most open and experimental starting areas in a video game, period. I do believe that my love of it becomes a bit diluted with each subsequent playthrough, because I know the true strengths and all the real crazy open fun and big choices and dynamic moments lie outside of Fort Joy. I guess there's a bit of symbolism in there, right? But still, I think this is something people should be aware of when you go through maybe a second or third playthrough. Now that we've moved on from some of the flaws, I'd like to wrap this up with the Game Master mode. This allows you to, long story short, essentially create your own D&D campaigns. The game gives you a ton of tools to mess with here, and you can make your own stories in game. I know this is for a very specific crowd. I personally love the idea of it, but don't indulge in it nearly as much as I want to. Part of it is sort of like, I call it the Civilization syndrome. I don't play Civilization because I know I will lose all free time. I will sink every bit of it into there, and all productivity I have in my life will go down. Same thing sort of applies for Game Master mode. I can be a bit of a perfectionist with this stuff. I don't want to make a pile of crap, so I would sit down and meticulously work on this, sacrificing everything for it. It's self-control and I guess self-awareness, but trust me, it's really cool. It's awesome. However, if you are playing on console, you do not have access to this. This is on the PC version. So ladies and gentlemen, that's my 2019 review for Divinity Original Sin 2. I cannot recommend it enough. Hopefully at this point in time, you're more aware of this product, how I think it's a little more accessible in a co-op area. If you didn't know that yet, the story is great. Combat is really a superstar here. The exploration is more rewarding than any other one in its genre. It is a bit old school. It does have a couple of kinks here and there, but overall a well-rounded product, and Larian has quickly turned into, easily, hands down, one of my favorite RPG developers. So let me know what you think of Divinity Original Sin 2 in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from all of you. What kind of build do you run? What kind of character are you playing as? How many times have you played the game? Anything to convince people to fight the good fight here in Revellon. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. Big thank you to the patrons for making videos like this possible. I love each and every single one of you, and I thank those of you who stuck to the end of this video for giving me your time. Do consider supporting my Patreon, as that is also linked in the description down below, and it supports all of the content I create here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.